maybe Evergreen Terrace. The wealthy neighborhood where every family seemed to compete over who could hand out the biggest candy bars. When Casey returned carrying 2 pillowcases so full they looked ready to burst, Jake believed he'd figured it out. It was obvious. No haunted cemetery. No hidden path. No impossible street. Just rich people with expensive candy. That explanation made sense. It was safe. It was real. Far easier to believe than a trail hidden among graves that opened the door to another version of the town. Jake folded the map with an exhausted sigh. If this ends with me getting no candy. He pointed a finger at Aiden. You owe me 2 months of your allowance. For a split second, Aiden simply stared at him. Then his entire face lit up. Yes. He almost shouted. I'll give you 3 months. I promise. Without hesitation, he thrust out his hand. His excitement was impossible to hide. Jake couldn't help staring. No one should have looked that happy about walking into a cemetery after dark. Still, he knew arguing was pointless. If following the map was the only way to put the legend to rest, and if it earned him 3 months of Aiden's much larger allowance, then maybe it was worth wasting one Halloween night. He sighed once more and reached out. Their hands met. A simple handshake. Nothing more. At least, that's what it felt like. Neither boy realized. They had just made a promise that would lead them somewhere no child was ever meant to find. As Aiden practically bounced down the trail, clutching the map against his chest, Jake finally managed a faint smile. His friend's excitement was contagious. Maybe the whole thing would turn into nothing more than an embarrassing story they'd laugh about at school the next morning. Maybe getting lost in the woods would be worth it. Maybe. Just maybe. Walking the cemetery run would somehow quiet the ache that tightened inside his chest every time he remembered Casey. He didn't know it yet. Some grief doesn't lead you back to the people you've lost. Sometimes it leads you exactly where they disappeared. The boys returned home before sunset, slipping back into the warmth of their houses as though nothing unusual had happened. Over dinner, they laughed with their families. They talked about costumes, about candy, about which neighborhoods they planned to visit that night. Neither of them mentioned the map. Neither of them mentioned the cemetery run. Some secrets felt safer left unspoken. Especially on Halloween. It was only the second year their parents had trusted them to go trick-or-treating without an adult. No one suspected a thing. By the time darkness settled over the town, the 2 boys met exactly where they had promised. The northern cemetery. The air already carried that unmistakable October chill, and the distant laughter of children drifted through the streets behind them. It sounded comfortingly alive. The cemetery did not. They leaned their bicycles behind the weathered wooden sign at the entrance, carefully hiding them beneath thick bushes where no passing headlights would catch the metal frames. If everything went according to plan, they'd be back before anyone noticed they were gone. It was about chasing a story. Each carried a backpack and 2 empty pillowcases. The plan was simple. Fill one. Stuff it into the backpack. Fill the second. Walk home with both. If the legend was true, they'd need every bit of space they had. And if it wasn't, they'd simply waste a night wandering through the woods.
Neither possibility frightened Jake nearly as much as the thought of what waited between them. The trail. If it even existed. The bikes would stay behind. The old stories never mentioned anyone riding through the cemetery run. Only walking. Always walking. As though the path refused to carry anyone moving too quickly. So. Jake lowered his voice almost without realizing it. Where do we start? His eyes swept nervously across the rows of crooked headstones. He hated breaking rules. And while there wasn't a fence, no locked gate, no warning signs, he couldn't shake the feeling they weren't supposed to be there after dark. Not because someone would catch them. Because something else might. We have to pass through part of the cemetery first. Aiden unfolded the faded map beneath the glow of his flashlight before folding it again with surprising confidence. I came here earlier today. I know where we're going. He motioned for Jake to follow. Come on. Without another word, Aiden started up the winding stone path. Jake hesitated. Only for a second. Before following. The trail climbed a gentle hill, the gravel crunching beneath their shoes. At the top. The entire cemetery stretched out below them. Hundreds of gravestones. Rows upon rows disappearing into darkness. Moonlight washed over the marble like pale water, while thick fog drifted lazily between the graves, hiding the ground beneath a ghostly blanket. Everything was perfectly still. Too still. No insects. No birds. Not even the rustling of leaves. Only the distant sound of their own footsteps. And somehow, that silence felt wrong. The farther they wandered from the main path, the heavier the darkness became. Aiden no longer followed the gravel walkway. Instead, he turned sharply between rows of aging gravestones, weaving confidently through the cemetery as though he'd memorized every inch of it. Jake wasn't sure when they'd stopped being visible from the entrance. He only realized. He couldn't see the gate anymore. Adelia Archivillari. Aiden stopped beneath an old stone arch, brushing moss from the weathered name carved into the monument. She founded the town. His voice echoed strangely in the night. Dad told me everyone gives the credit to her husband. But she was actually the first person to settle here. She and her sister built this place into more than just a lonely farmhouse. They helped build the first homes. The first streets. The first. He paused. Everything. Jake stared silently at the ancient grave. The stone looked older than anything else around it. The engraved letters had nearly vanished beneath decades of rain and creeping moss. For reasons he couldn't explain. It didn't feel abandoned. It felt remembered.